So far we discussed about the Mughal court and how the layout used to be there in the Mughal court, what kind of the court etiquettes used to be there. Now we will discuss about the titles and the gifts. So what kind of title were assumed by the Mughal ruler and what kind of the titles were conferred by them to the other people who used to be the courtier, and what kind of gifts used to be exchanged at different occasions at that time. So we will discuss about these things. Grand titles were adopted by the Mughal emperor at the time of coronation. When they used to become the ruler, they used to adopt the grand title, and they also used to assume the grand title after a victory over an enemy. The granting of title to men of merit was an important aspect of Mughal nobility. So they used to confer the title to the people who used to have the merit. They were also rewarded with the title. So this was a common practice in the Mughal era, and the ruler used to practice this kind of things. A man's ascent in the court hierarchy could be traced through the title he held. Means the courtier was given a title, and with the help of that title we can come to know the importance of that person in the eyes of the Mughal ruler. Like the title Asaf Khan was given to one of the highest minister of the Mughal court, and Asaf Khan was a legendary minister of the King Suleiman or Solomon. So to commemorate that great minister, the highest minister of the Mughal court was also given the title of Asaf Khan. The title Mirza Raja, which was another important title, was accorded by Aurangzeb to his two highest ranking nobles, and these nobles were the Rajput rulers of Rajasthan, and these included Raja Jai Singh from Jaipur and Jaswant Singh. Titles could be earned or paid for. Titles can also be purchased from the ruler by paying a sum of money. Like one example is given over here. Mir Khan offered rupees 1 lakh to Aurangzeb for the letter Alif, that is the letter A, to be added to his name, and his name later on became the Amir Khan. So from Mir Khan to Amir Khan, he wanted the name, and for that he paid a sum of rupees 1 lakh to the ruler, and the ruler was Aurangzeb at that time. Other awards included the robe of honor, that is called Khilat, that was given by the ruler to the person who did the commendable job at that time. A garment once worn by the emperor and imbued with his benediction. So what was Khilat? Khilat used to be the garment which was once worn by the emperor, and it is believed that emperor's blessings comes with that garment which is worn by him, and that is given to some person or a person who used to be having the merit to get that kind of honor. So it was given by the ruler. One gift, the sarapa, that used to be a garment from head to foot, consisted a tunic, that is also a part of it, a turban and a sash, that is patka, and a jeweled ornament were often given as a gift by the emperor to the person who was having the merit to win such kind of gifts by the ruler. So these kind of honors and awards were given by the ruler to his nobles at various occasions. The lotus blossom, which used to be the highest title or highest award given at that time, the lotus blossom set with the jewels, that is also known by the name of Padam Murassa, was given only in exceptional circumstances. A courtier never approached the emperor empty-handed. So a person who wants to meet the emperor, he never approached him empty-handed. He used to take some thing as a gift for the emperor. The small gift used to be the small sum of money, that was called as the Nazr. The word Nazr has also resulted in the Nazrana, or a large amount of money was called as the Peshkas. So Nazr, which was a small amount, and Peshkas used to be a large amount of money which was paid by the visitor to the ruler. So these kind of gifts were given to the ruler by the people who used to visit the court. Gifts were regarded as a sign of honor and respect. Thomas Roy, who was a British and he was also an envoy who was sent to the court of the ruler of Mughal dynasty, he disappointed when a ring he had presented to Asaf Khan, who used to be the highest minister at that time, was returned to him for the reason that it was worth merely 400 rupees. So Thomas Roy took a gift for the Asaf Khan, who used to be the highest minister of the Mughal ruler, and it was of merely 400 rupees. So it was not according to his status. So it was returned back to the Thomas Roy because it was felt that it is insulting the position of the Asaf Khan. Secondly, he also demanded a chair in the court, so that was also a surprise for the courtier who used to be there at that time. Now the imperial household, that what kind of household used to be there at that time, what activities used to be there in the house of the Mughal ruler. You can see this is the interior of the house of the Mughal ruler. The term harem is frequently used to refer to the domestic world of the Mughals. So the domestic world of the Mughal was known by the name of harem, which is a term which was used for it. It originates in the Persian word haram, which means a sacred place. So the domestic world of the Mughal ruler used to be considered as the sacred place. The Mughal household consisted of the emperor's wives. He was having several wives, so they were also part of the harem, and the concubines which used to be there in the service of these wives, his near and distant relatives, mother, stepmother, foster mother, sister, daughters, daughter-in-law, aunts, children. So these all people used to be the part of the harem of the Mughal ruler, and female servant and slaves were also there. Polygamy was practiced widely in the Indian subcontinent, especially among the ruling groups. So a ruler was having more than one wife. So there used to be polygamy in the Indian subcontinent, and that was also practiced by the Mughal ruler. Both the Rajput clans as well as the Mughal marriage was a way of cementing political relationship. So there used to be the marital relationship between the Rajputs and the Mughal rulers, and it was believed that that is a way to cement the political relationship. And you know that the wife of the Akbar, which was the Jodhabai, that was also a Rajput princess, and later on Jahangir was also married to a Rajput princess of Jodhpur, and that was a way to cement the political relationship between these two ruling dynasties. The gifts of territory was often accompanied by the gift of a daughter. So there used to be a dowry kind of system, and the territory was gifted to the ruler at the time of the marriage. This ensured a continuing hierarchical relationship between the ruling groups. Now it was through the link of the marriage and the relationship that develops as a result that Mughals were able to form a vast kinship. So Mughals were having a vast kinship, and with the help of this vast kinship, they used to coordinate and control their vast empire. So you can see that this is a marriage scene of that time. In the Mughal household, a distinction was maintained between the wives who came from the royal families. So there were two kinds of wives. The first, which came from the royal families, they were called as the Begums, and there was another kind of wife who used to come from the lower birth, and they were called as the Aghas. The Begums married after receiving a huge amount of cash and valuable as the dowr, that is called as the meher. So the Begum used to carry a lot of dowry from their parents, and they were given a higher status in the wives of the Mughal ruler, and they were given greater attention by the husband as well as by the slaves also. Apart from the wives, numerous male and female servants used to be there, which used to be in the service of these people. So Aghas could also get the title of Begum, but it was entirely on the wish of the husband, and whether they used to give birth to a child who used to become the ruler later on, and at that time also that lady could get the status of a Begum. After Noor Jahan, she was the wife of Jahangir. Mughal queens and princesses began to control the significant financial resources. Earlier they were not controlling the financial resources, but later on and the women in the Mughal household used to get the financial resources. Like one Shah Jahan's daughter, that is Jahan Ara, and second daughter was this Roshan Ara, enjoyed an annual income often equal to that of the high imperial Mansabdar. So Mansabdar used to be the nobles, and they were having higher annual income. So as compared to the Mansabdar, they were also getting the income. So these were the two daughters of Shah Jahan, which were also having a huge income. And Jahan Ara in addition received revenues. She used to get revenue from the port city of Surat, that is in Gujarat, which was a lucrative center of overseas trade. So overseas trade or the trade through the sea route used to take place from the Surat, and it used to generate a lot of revenue, and that revenue used to go to the Jahan Ara. So the income of the Jahan Ara used to be very high. And Jahan Ara also participated in many architectural projects of that time during the reign of Shah Jahan. Like in the new capital of Shah Jahan, that was Shahjahanabad, right now it is in Delhi, that Lal Killa area. The Bazaar of Chandni Chowk was designed by the Jahan Ara. So the Bazaar of Chandni Chowk, you can see from the image, this kind of bazaar used to be there, and this is the Bazaar of Chandni Chowk, and where there used to be the trees on the roads, and a canal used to be there in the middle of that road. Like this used to be the canal, but right now it is nowhere. So this was designed by the Jahan Ara, and she could do such a vast project because of the income which she used to get from the lucrative trade of the Surat. Now another interesting book giving a glimpse into the domestic world of the Mughals, and that was the Humayun Nama, and it was written by the Gulbadan Begum. Gulbadan was the daughter of the Babur and Humayun's sister, and she wrote the biography of Humayun, that is called Humayun Nama. Gulbadan could write frequently in Turkish as well as in the Persian language, so she was also educated woman, and she used to write in Persian as well as in the Turkish language. She described in great detail the conflict and tension among the princes and the kings, and the important mediating role the elderly women used to play at that time. So she told about the household conflict. There used to be continuous conflict among different wives of the ruler, as well as their children used to contest for the power. So there used to be conflict, and these conflicts used to be resolved by the elderly lady of the Mughal household. So that was written by the Gulbadan Begum in the biography of Humayun, that is known as the Humayun Nama. Now we will discuss about the imperial officials of that time, what kind of officers used to be there, and how they were recorded different ranks at that time, that we will discuss over here. So we will discuss about the recruitment and the ranks. One important pillar of the Mughal state was its corps of officers. So they used to be the important pillar of the Mughal dynasty or Mughal rule in India. In Akbar's imperial service, Turanis, which came from Turan, Iranian nobles were present, and they were present from the earliest time when Babur used to be the ruler. So they used to be there in the Humayun's court as well as in the court of Akbar. Two ruling groups of Indian origin were also there in the imperial service of the Mughal ruler from 1560 onwards, and these were the Rajputs and Indian Muslims, and Indian Muslims were called as the Sheikhzadas. Iranians gained high offices under the Jahangir because the wife of the Jahangir used to be the Noor Jahan, and she was an Iranian lady, and under her influence many Iranian nobles used to be there in his court. Aurangzeb appointed Rajputs to the higher positions like Raja Jai Singh and Jaswant Singh, and Marathas used to be there in the court of the Aurangzeb, and they were in sizable numbers. So many Marathas were also the nobles in the court of the Aurangzeb. All holders of the government offices held ranks. They were given their ranks, and these were known as the mansabs, comprising the two numerical designations. So there were two designations. One was the Jat, which was an indicator of the position in the imperial hierarchy, that what is the position or what was the status of that mansabdar, that was known as the Jat, and the salary of the official, that was also called as the mansab, and Sawar, the horseman which he used to keep with himself for the army, for the imperial service, that was called as the Sawar. So these used to be the different terms which were used in the Mansabdari system. The nobles participated in the military campaign with their armies and also served as the officers of the empire in the provinces. So they were also given the duty of different provinces, as well as when there used to be crisis or whenever there used to be a battle, so they used to present themselves along with their armies in the service of the Mughal ruler. The troopers maintained superior horses and they were also branded by the flank, and these used to be the imperial mark that was called as the Dag. Akbar, who designed the Mansab system, also established spiritual relationship. He used to call the Mansab as the spiritual follower of Akbar, and he used to call them as his disciple, that is the Murid, so that they remain loyal to the Akbar. A person wishing to join the service petitioned through a noble. The person who used to become the Mansabdar, that could have a petition through the noble. The existing noble can give a tajweez, that was called an application, to become the nobles in the service of the Mughal ruler, and in this way he can get the Mansabdari of a particular region. The Mir Bakshi, he was also known by the name of payment master, stood in the open court on the right of the emperor and presented all kind of the appointment or promotion. So he was responsible for giving the appointment and promotion to these Mansabdars, while his offices prepared orders bearing the seal and signature as well as those of the emperor. So there used to be a documentation which was prepared by his office, and there used to be signature of the Mir Bakshi as well as the emperor. And after the signature of Mir Bakshi and emperor, he was given a rank and position. Two other important ministers at the center used to be the Diwan-e-Ala and Sadr-us-Sudur, the minister of grant, that was called as the Madad-e-Mas, and in charge of appointing local judges or qazis. So there used to be the ministers. They were given different portfolios, and they also used to be there to make a smooth functioning of the rule of the emperor. The three ministers occasionally came together as an advisory body to the ruler. Nobles stationed at the court, that was called as the Tainat-e-Rakab, that used to remain in the fort of the ruler, and it used to be in the service to the ruler for 24 hours, and they were duty bound to appear twice daily. So daily they used to present themselves before the ruler to ensure that they are always ready for his safety and service, and it used to be there in the public audience hall. Now you can see that this is an image of a noble of the Mughal ruler Akbar, and his name is Todramal. So the first Indian person who joined the imperial service was the Raja Bharmil of Amber. Raja Bharmal of Amber means he was the king of the Amber. Amber is near Jaipur, and that is the Amber fort. And Raja Bharmal Kachwaha became the first noble in the court of the Akbar, and later on his daughter, that was Jodhabai, she also got married to Akbar. Members of Hindu caste inclined towards the education and accountancy were also given promotion and appointment, like Todramal. He was also an accountant and financial minister of Akbar. So these kind of appointments were given by their ruler in Mughal India.